Crews in Tennessee showed up to a Rivian dealership and found 4 electric vehicles on fire right next to the building. All of this started with a single vehicle that was plugged in and charging. You found stashed. I'm Pat, firefighter, mechanical engineer, and battery guy. Around 1:20 a.m., Franklin Fire was dispatched to the Rivian Service Center. When crews arrived, they found multiple Rivian EVs burning directly against the structure. The fire was already pushing into the building and threatening the service bays. It appeared the fire started in a Rivian R1T pickup truck and spread to 3 other vehicles on both sides. In total, 2 R1Ts and 1 R1S were completely destroyed, and there was a 4th truck, an R1T, that was heavily damaged. Rivian uses large lithium-ion battery packs built from thousands of 2170 battery cells. It's actually in a double-stack configuration. Bottom line, even if the fire didn't start in the battery itself, once that heat reaches the pack, things get intense really fast. According to the initial report, one of the vehicles was actually plugged into the charger when things caught on fire. That's believed to be the starting point. And that's really interesting because Rivian has had past issues with their charging system. This is a great example of that failure. If it starts in or around the charging port and never makes it to the high voltage battery, it's not a big deal. At least not for the fire department. The owner, they might have some issues. But in this case, you can tell somebody caught it early. But when something fails and ignites at 1:20 a.m., it gets a big head start on things before anybody notices. This doesn't appear to be a vehicle that was involved in a crash. There wasn't any visible damage to the vehicle or the pack. These vehicles were just charging, unattended, and likely in for service. When Franklin crews arrived, flames were already impinging on the service center wall itself. The dealership got extremely lucky here because on the other side of the wall, there's 2 more vehicles, 2 more electric vehicles. This could have easily turned into a multi-alarm fire. This is where training matters, and I don't mean just for firefighters. Service center employees need to know the risks. And yes, they are highly trained when it comes to the high voltage systems and working on many aspects of electric vehicles. But most service center employees never get any real training on the risks of thermal runaway. Manufacturers and dealers act like it's something that only happens out on the roadway itself, or they just don't want to acknowledge the fact that it can happen right there in the service bay. So the people actually working on these vehicles every day, they're left blind to the possibility. And that's how you end up with situations like this. Quick plug, I do offer online training for dealerships and service centers. Reach out if you'd like to learn more. But here's the truth. A lot of these vehicles are at the shop because something isn't working right. So charging them when nobody's around, overnight or all weekend, probably not the smartest move. And parking them right against the building, also not a great idea. And just to be clear, dealership fires involving electric vehicles, it's not that rare. We've seen multiple fires around this exact same situation. Sometimes we've got vehicles on lifts and they're on fire. They're left there overnight or on the weekends. We've seen transit agencies lose buses inside maintenance bays. Anytime you have high-energy batteries being charged indoors or right against a building's wall, you're stacking the deck against yourself. Firefighters stayed on scene for about 4 hours trying to cool the vehicles. They used pancake nozzles to push water underneath the cars to cool the battery packs themselves. Now, there was one firefighter that was injured during the incident, but thankfully they were treated quickly at the hospital and released. There's one tactic I always recommend in situations like this for the fire department themselves. Think about moving the vehicles. We're not used to dragging burning cars around. It's just not something we typically deal with. But when you're working with electric vehicles, separating them from the structure is huge. Because of the way these were parked up against the building, you have to think about where most of that heat and flame is going to come from. Now in EV specifically, a lot of it doesn't come out of the front of the vehicle. Typically it's more to the sides of the battery pack or towards the rear of the vehicle. So getting that vehicle at least 15 feet away from that wall, it would have been a huge help. Overall, crews had a solid stop on this fire. But the question still stands. Why park these vehicles so close together and charge them overnight when nobody's around? Again, it all comes back to training. And honestly, a lot of people overlook how dangerous these situations can get. There's an uncomfortable truth here. Once thermal runaway starts, everything depends on isolation, ventilation, and detection. That's something dealerships and fleet operators absolutely need to pay attention to. Even in controlled environments, a single failure can escalate quickly.